So this next 30-minute session, we're going to talk about moving virtual machines around inside of your environment.
So that's not me having Hyper-V running on my Windows 8 laptop and being able to move around the country then?
Not so much, no, okay. Absolutely not. Andrew's going to ask me lots of questions about virtual machine mobility as we go through. I'm Simon May, and we're going to have a conversation in front of you about our approach to moving virtual machines around, and we're going to see some of that live and in action. However, first off, we want to have a quick chat around what we can do with our virtual machine mobility. The first thing is that we can manage them completely independently of the underlying infrastructure, and we can do lots of different things with that particular approach. It means that we can move machines around between themselves by having them on some shared storage, and that can be a different type of shared storage than it would have been previously.
Yep. So that was earlier on. If you caught the first session this morning, then we were showing you how to, or if you want to watch it offline, we were doing some stuff with SMB3, weren't we?
We were, absolutely. We created an application share, and we could put our virtual machines onto that application share. In fact, we might do that a little bit later on.
Yeah, okay. And then what we've always had in Windows Server 2008 R2 is the ability to be able to move a virtual machine around nodes where we had traditional shared storage, like a SAN. We can move a virtual machine around as part of planned maintenance without stopping it.
Absolutely. Yep.
So we can still do that, but we can do some other things as well, Simon.
Well, we can move the storage around. We can move it between one storage server and another, between one file share and another, between one SAN and another. We can also move those virtual machines around without having any shared storage between the two. Right. So just with a piece of string running between two laptops, well, a piece of string which has a whole load of twisted pairs of cable inside of it, just between two laptops, we can start to move our virtual machines around. Okay. Again, brilliant for planned maintenance.
So what have we done to make all of that work then?
Well, there's lots of underlying improvements inside of Hyper-V, lots of underlying improvements inside of SMB3. Of course, don't forget, there's a fourth little thing that we can do.
Oh, we can have a copy.
We can have a copy of that virtual machine. We can have that virtual machine stored offline in a different location. So essentially, disaster recovery is baked into Hyper-V, because we can have another site set up in another completely disparate location. Say, in our case with Microsoft, we might have a disparate site over in Seattle, and we can replicate our virtual machines over to that remote site using Hyper-V replication, so that we can keep things in sync, and should something happen to our primary site, we can bring up our remote site using the exact same copy of that virtual machine with snapshots in there, so we can roll back to a previous point in time, potentially before the disaster occurred.
Right, okay.
So let's have a quick look at some of this technology and the way it all fits together.
Yep.
In this case, we have on this slide a setup where we have two physical hosts.
Those are the grey boxes we can see at the top.
Absolutely,
there.
Yep, the grey box is there. And we have some shared storage, which is an SMB storage share.
Right.
So that means that our virtual machines can sit on that SMB storage share.
Yep.
And when we want to move them around, that's exactly what we can do. We can have a connection between the two machines, an IP connection. That might be a separate network. We might have, as we'll see a little bit later, use quality of service in order to manage that network connection and segregate the actual traffic off a little bit. When we want to, we actually will then decide to pick up all the configuration data from our left node and move all of that configuration data across to the right-hand side node. Then, once we've done that, we're going to start to migrate that memory information, all the information that the current server has in memory. We're going to keep doing that until we get a really small delta. In fact, until the delta is decreased in size to such a small amount that there is no difference between the two.
Yep, okay.
And then finally, we're going to actually move any modified pages over, left to right and left to right. And then eventually, the virtual machine itself will shift from our left node across to our right-hand side node. And we'll see absolutely no downtime in that move at all. If you're doing something like ping across that, you might see a little dropout, because ping uses a slightly different protocol. It uses UDP, so it's not making sure that we have an end-to-end connection. However, if you've got a user who's using, say, a terminal service, a remote desktop services session, or is connecting over to a file share, they won't see any drop in service at all.
Right.
Another option with all of our ability to move our machines around is that we might want to do a storage move. So in the case of a storage move, what we actually want to be able to do is just say this running virtual machine, which is in location A, we need to keep that machine running, but there's something wrong with the storage underneath it. Maybe we're starting to run out of storage space. Maybe we need to do some work on that storage, or maybe literally we just need to pick it up and change the directories that it's in. In that case, we can do a storage move. And what will happen there is that the read writes that we're seeing going down to our original VHD will actually start to get copied and mirrored across to our second VHD, the copy of that VHD, as things move. Then eventually, we'll start to read and write to both in parallel. And finally, we'll just only read and write to our new copy of that virtual machine that's in our new location.
So my virtual machine continues to execute on here, but its storage might have moved from over there to over there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Might well have moved around. And then finally, the third type of migration that we can do without any downtime at all is actually migrating the hosts. We can actually pick up the virtual machine information that's running on one live host, leave the storage where it is, and then start to move over that configuration data.
Yep.
We can start to move over that memory, then we can decrease that memory amount and decrease that delta and down until we have nothing. And then at the point at which both machines have exactly the same information in memory, we can switch over.
Yep. But then we can also, so what we can here do is that if I imagine, well, we've got a virtual machine running on this laptop, so essentially I can pick the whole virtual machine up while it's running and dump it onto here.
Completely, absolutely. And then we can combine the two approaches. So we can move everything that's in memory, all of that current executing process, and then we can combine the storage approach of migrating the storage over.
Yep.
And that actually allows us to get into the situation where we're doing a shared nothing live migration, where everything, literally, the execution state and the disk are all moved between the original host and the second host.
And if you come on one of our IT camps, we actually challenge you to do this. You bring along 2 laptops. We give you, well, you each bring along a laptop. You sit with a delegate next to you at the camp. You get a standard Ethernet cable. You don't even need a crossover cable these days.
Yep.
Connect the 2 machines up, and we'll show you how to move a virtual machine between 2 laptops, you know, just in a morning with a bit of PowerShell and a little bit of script.
Absolutely. And let's challenge everyone else to do that right now. If you go onto the Windows Server 2012 website, download the evaluation version of Windows Server 2012, send us a bitmap of your installed or downloaded copy of Windows Server 2012 to the UK-IT-Pro@Microsoft email address. We'll send you out a little t-shirt just so that you can say, here's what I did at home. I actually did go and download the Windows Server 2012 eval, and I've got the t-shirt to prove it. So absolutely, very easy to do. Go and email UK-IT Pro with your installed copy of the Windows Server 2012 evaluation. Little hint, if you just take a copy of the desktop, in the bottom right-hand corner, it'll tell us that it's an evaluation version, so we'll know that you've actually downloaded the eval, and we'll see if people can start to do this stuff at home.
Yeah. And we've got scripts on SkyDrive. If you want to ping us in that email that you want to know how to do this stuff, we can send you the cookbook to do it as well.
Absolutely, we can.
And some
do
cool
exactly
PowerShell
that
too.
Yeah.
Which we keep changing. So Simon, we can move virtual machines around like crazy. What else? Do you want to show people how to do that?
Well, let's show. Yeah, absolutely. So we'll switch over to our machine and actually show you how you can start to move your virtual machines around inside of your environment.
So over here we've got, we've got some hosts, London 1, 2, 3, and our remote office in Seattle.
Absolutely. So all of our, you have to remember for a moment that that our Seattle office is way away and is disconnected over a relatively slow network connection. We'll show you that a little bit later on when we start to talk about replica. Yeah. However, first off, we're going to have a look at virtual machine mobility in as much as what you would do inside of your own data center with your various hosts. Let's have a quick look at the configuration options that we've already gone through in order to set this up. Obviously, we need to configure our hosts in order to be able to allow them to do these live migrations, because there are security concerns here that we do need to address. So let's pop into our settings for our Hyper-V host here, and if we just go down to the bottom, we'll see that we have some options for live migrations and storage migrations, and also our replica configuration.
Simon, that live migration setting there, it says 2 live migrations. We didn't used to allow this at all. And now we've done some testing. I've seen over 100 simultaneous live migrations, where other people are capped currently at 10, apparently.
Absolutely, apparently so.
So if you've seen if you've seen spam about the fact that live migration is slow in Hyper-V, it's because you need to be comparing it with the one that we are talking about today, not the one that's 2 or 3 years old.
Absolutely.
In other words, 2008 R2.
Absolutely.
It has changed.
Yep, absolutely. This is a new feature, the ability to do simultaneous live migrations.
I got my soapbox there anyway.
That's
back at the day job.
Back at the ranch. So we can now move multiple virtual machines at the same time, as long as you've got the bandwidth for it. You might want to apply some quality of service here. Otherwise, you could actually just saturate your network with virtual machine migrations.
So probably want to watch the upcoming section on networking.
Absolutely. In this case, though, let's just run through a few of the settings that we've put in place in order to control how live migrations are going to work on this endpoint. For a start, we've enabled them. That's the on-off switch, master switch that you need to have turned on. And then we've made a decision to use Kerberos in order to authenticate our 2 virtual machine hosts. We've also had to make a couple of changes inside of Active Directory. The first of which is that we've created a special group called Hyper-V servers, which actually allows us to manage our Hyper-V servers as if they are one.
Yep.
And that group itself is completely arbitrary. We made that up completely ourselves, nothing particularly special about it. It's just a domain global group. We've also been in and configured something called delegation, and we've done that for both of the hosts that we want to allow sending and receiving of live migrations for. And the reason we've done that is because we're going to do something called live migration with shared nothing, and those virtual machines need to be able to act as if they are each other. So we are delegating two services, the CIFS, the Common Internet File Service, for those servers, and we're also delegating the Virtual Machine Management Service against Virtual Machine Migration Service for the opposite server. So if I'm on host A and I want to migrate to host B, I need to allow exactly that approach to be put in place. We'll show you that in just a second as soon as we move away from this window. The other approach to do this, particularly useful if you're in a service provider environment, is to use CredSSP and actually to put SSL certificates in place in order to manage this kind of migration.
Yeah, I think we come back to that point in a minute because more plays into replication, I think. So.
It does, absolutely. It could be very useful for that. We've turned on the number of live migrations that we want to use, and then just down here we're sort of playing around with this in a lab environment, so we could do this however you want to. And in this case, we're actually going to use any available network to do our live migrations. Yeah. We might want to, if we have multi-homed hosts in this case, we might want to tie that down and use specific networks so that we don't put don't put migrations out onto, let's say, a network where our users are connecting into these servers.
Absolutely. The whole point of moving a virtual machine is so that our users can access it while we're moving it around. So it would be rude to hog all the bandwidth so they can't get in.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll just switch over to our Hyper-V servers group inside of Active Directory Administration Center. We will pop into our members group here and have a quick look at how we've delegated control to London 1.
Sure.
It's going to pop into the London 1 object.
Because you need to do this right, otherwise you can hit problems when you do live migrations.
Yeah, completely. If you select just this option here, trust any computer for delegation, you'll be able to do live migration with share nothing, but only in one direction. Yeah. We have to have constrained delegation to be able to bring those machines back as if we are on the remote host. And then you'll see that what we've set up is we've set up quite a lot of constrained delegation here, but here are the critical items. What we're saying is that London 2 is able to act as if it is London 1 for the CIFS service, and also for the, let's just expand that slightly, the Microsoft Virtual System Migration Service. Yeah. So those are the two key services that we need to enable to make this work.
So what we've done is we've just done that for the FQDN and for the server name for each of our physical hosts, so that every host can manage every machine. You wouldn't probably do that in a real environment, but it just gives us flexibility out the front here.
Absolutely. So we now have our Hyper-V host here, two machines. I'm going to just take this particular virtual machine, right-click on it, and we're going to go and move it. And we're going to move the virtual machine in the first instance.
Yep.
So what we're actually going to do is pick up the virtual machine in all of its memory state and move it from host A to host B.
Or London 1 to London 2 in this case.
Absolutely. So we're going to say London 2 as our target host in this case. And we're going to move all of the machine's data into a single location. We could decide to put that data into different places if that was more efficient with the way that we've designed our disk infrastructure. Yeah. Next, we're going to say what folder we want to place this into on our remote host. And notice, we're actually remotely browsing the file system in context on that remote host. So we're actually seeing what's called the D drive on our remote host. If we went onto our London 2 machine, we would see that that was the D drive. We're just going to drop this virtual machine into our library and into this temp VM store that we created earlier. Say next and hit finish. That's then going to go away and have a check of the network configuration on our remote device.
Yeah, because of course that virtual machine needs to be able to be seen by a user, so it's got a network, it's expecting to see something called CourtNet, Simon. You haven't got one of those on London 2.
Absolutely not. Let's see what we do have in place. We have, we've got something called NetCorp on our second server. Yep. That's probably the same machine. In fact, because I configured both machines, I know that, and I obviously made a mistake when I was typing in the name on our other host.
Okay, but it's important that the move will only actually start going through if it's absolutely sure it's going to work, otherwise it will roll back and the users will never lose connection to their virtual machine. We'd rather just fail it back and it not to happen. Absolutely.
So I've just been in and finished off that particular move, and that's now going to continue in the background. So that machine is picking up all of its physical state from London 1, moving all of its physical state to London 2, moving all of its memory from London 1 to London 2. We'll just pop down and here's one we prepared earlier, hopefully. This is a ping which has been running for quite some time against our server. Just to prove that, we're going to cancel it and restart it running on server 1 so that we can see the command. and that's now just going to run away in the background. We're probably going to see one ping drop out on this connection whilst it does that. Because we're running it continuously, we'll be able to come back to our ping a little bit later on as it's running through.
Okay, so should we press on while it's cooking away, Simon?
Absolutely, yeah. Let's just ditch back to our slides for a second. So
because obviously that's got a, say a 10 gig hard disk, it's maybe got 4 gigs of memory, so 14 gigs of data it's got to move, and we want it to do that in such a way that you can actually still access that machine, and we've only got one connection between the two servers, so
yeah,
it's just going to take a little while to run.
So one of the other things that we can do is Hyper-V replica.
Yeah, so I like to think of this as being like the parachute or your fire insurance policy. Ideally you want to have fire extinguishers everywhere in your building so it doesn't burn down, but eventually you think, actually I need to take out some fire insurance, and this is your insurance policy. So we're taking a copy, we're keeping an up-to-date copy of a virtual machine somewhere else, but that somewhere else the virtual machine's not on, it's just sitting there ready to be used if the worst comes to the worst.
Yeah, absolutely. So we just want to be having that there, sat, completely kept in sync. We also want to have some way of rolling back to previous points in time.
Potentially, because I do make mistakes, Simon.
Absolutely.
And it's good to be able to go back maybe to the previous snapshot, and it will keep a rolling, potentially 4 snapshots, and drop one off the bottom and put a new one on the top, so you've got consistent points you can go back to.
Yeah, because there might be a point in time that you actually started to get a data center flood, and then your server started to become underwater, and that could start to be the problem that you might face.
Yeah.
So what we're actually doing with Hyper-V Replica is literally picking up the entire state and copying it to that remote machine.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that the whole thing ends up in that remote location, but we have to be really mindful of the way that we bring that state back.
Yeah, we don't want 2 of those up there. They could have if you've got that old application server on 10.0.0.1, and you bring another copy up and it's got a fixed IP address because the application has talked to it on its IP port, you don't really want 2 of those sitting out there on your network. Which one's going to be king, if you will?
Yes, absolutely. You want to make sure that you're always in control of that. So we don't do things like you would expect to see in a cluster environment, like automatic failover.
Yeah.
Because what we're doing is we're providing a resiliency, not high availability.
Yeah, yes, that's exactly right. And how you control the DR scenarios is up to you. You might want to automate, but the rules are going to be your own.
Absolutely. And it's going to be different depending on the scenario as well. In some cases, you might have had be in a situation where you need to fail over from your primary site. You can still access your servers, you can still do things remotely to them, and you need to be able to say, you know what, these servers, we need to shut these down and fail over to our remote location. However, in some cases, we might actually want to be able to fail back to our other location in order to be able to, we might actually want to be able to do that from our remote location to push the failover across to the other location.
Yeah. So thoughts on that.
Sorry,
you probably want to test that failover, and I think a lot of people forget to test fail back as well, Simon.
Yes.
So if you've got and Replica's designed to run over a broadband link, so we're not talking about fiber optic cable running under the channel or anything like that. What we're talking about is maybe a DR site on a broadband link. So once you've got that failover happening, then obviously everything's going to be directed to that. Then you need to bring that replica back into your environment. And Replica's designed to work where either end can be a single machine, or either end could be a cluster. So you could do cluster-to-cluster replication, machine-to-machine replication, cluster to single machine to cluster. It's up to you how you want to do it. And if you're using a cluster, there's a special replica broker role that you put into your cluster that makes the cluster look like a replica server, and settings are exactly the same as they were before.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can make sure that with clustering we still have the ability to keep our availability in place. Okay, so
sorry, just where's these slides on a minute? That's not what I meant. Sorry.
So we're just going to switch back across to our demo rig for a second.
Yep.
And let's go and see what else we can do in terms of being able to move servers around in our environment.
Well,
Here we're going to connect across to our London 2 environment, and we actually have another server that we want to start to do a move with. In this case, this machine is actually a Windows 8 client machine, but it is just a virtual machine.
Yeah, so the guest operating system doesn't really matter. We could be moving Red Hat, we could be moving Windows, we could be moving a VDI machine, which I think is what you're moving here.
Absolutely.
And all that business about domains and credentials, the domain that the virtual machine is in doesn't really matter. What we're talking about is domain joining the hosts here so they trust each other, or establish some trust between hosts.
Yeah.
What the virtual machines is doing, it's not really our concern. It's the whole point of this is to be virtual machine agnostic.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So in this case, we're actually just going to pick up the virtual machine storage and do a storage migration. We're going to move it onto that file share that we created in the morning session.
Oh, right, okay.
So I'm just going to click on the option here to move the virtual machine storage.
Yep.
I'm going to say that I want to move the virtual machine's data to a single location, keeping it all in one place again. I'm then going to say that I want to move that data onto our D drive and into this library folder.
I thought you were moving it to some...
Oh, yes, you're right, actually. I'm going to move that into a file server, aren't I? So
I'm going to keep him honest here. So
file server 1 / share. Let's just actually go browsing that, make sure it's going to open up the right location for us.
Yep,
That's it. Okay, I'm going to create a new folder in here called VM Store, because I like to keep things in a nicely ordered place.
Okay.
Say next, click finish, next, and click finish. And that's now going to begin that migration of moving all of that up onto our file store. And it's actually going to fail. Why did that happen? Okay, we've got a general access denied error. So there's probably a really good reason for that. Let's go and have a quick look at the underlying causes. Let's have a look inside of our groups here. Whoops. Let's open up the right thing. So we have London 1 and London 2 inside of our Hyper-V servers group. That's good. Let's go and have a quick look at the properties of the file share across on our file and storage services. So where is it? Where's our file server 1 server?
You haven't put it into multi-server management, Simon. I think
Okay,
that's
let's go and add that server in. Cool.
Yep.
File server 1.
Yes, if you're watching the previous session on multi-server management, this is what you would do.
Okay. So we're just compounding everything so that we can see exactly what you'd need to do if you were doing this from home.
Yes, I had to troubleshoot this.
Yeah. So let's go and have a quick look at the disks that are attached into this server and the shares. So there's our file server 1. Let's pop down. We don't have any events to go and play with, so that's kind of interesting. Let's have a look at the disks that we have. Okay, so file server 1 is in there. We can see that we've got our 256 terabyte disk. I see that I've got a dedupe volume.
Yeah, volume. Yeah, it's just refreshing the.
Let's have a quick look at the view of our volumes above that. So we can see that we've got plenty of disk space on our 256 terabyte volume, quite free. Let's go and have a quick look at our shares. Okay, so on file server 1 we have something shared out as C shares share. Okay, that's a little bit interesting. What do we have that there? Let's go and do a new share, a new application share. Next, let's go and share that from our E drive. Call it VM Store. We don't want any of that stuff because we are putting virtual machines on there. Let's go and change the permissions so that our Hyper-V group has full control.
Right. Just selecting the principal Hyper-V servers, which is where all our servers belong to.
Yep. Full control. Okay. Okay. And next. And create. Okay, we've created our share. We've shared it out with the right permissions, and our share is now shared out as VM Store.
I see. So when you create that share this morning, you created it on the C drive, and of course that's not set up for application share, and that's why that didn't work.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay then.
So let's pop back through to our Hyper-V over here. Go and let's see if we can move that virtual machine this time. Move virtual machine storage.
So this is file server 1 VM Store you're trying to hit now.
Yep. So we're going to go to file server 1, and we have our VM Store folder.
Right.
And then hopefully this time we're going to be able to move that virtual machine. It's failed again, and we're still getting an access denied error to it. Let's just think about what the potential problem could be there while we move on to something slightly different. So that would actually then, having set that up properly, and we've probably done something wrong in the configuration, we'll carry on. I'm just going to go and actually set up migration of one of our other servers, this server 1 machine, over to our remote site in Seattle. So let's pop into Hyper-V settings and go down to replication. Here we've enabled replication using Kerberos again. Again, as you said earlier, we could have used HTTPS to make this work. Would have been great if we were in a service provider environment, or if we were actually wanting to replicate this actually out up to our hoster to be able to provide, to use a hoster's environment in order to be able to take this as a service from them. We're then going to specify the location that we want to drop this all off into the temp VM store. And then we want to, that's all the configuration that we need to put in place. What we could say, and if we were doing this in a more secure environment, we would actually allow only specified servers to be able to do the replication.
Yeah, okay.
We have then gone and repeated exactly that same set of settings inside of our Hyper-V settings group here on our Seattle server. And then finally, what we need to do is go back to the server that we want to go and replicate, and we're going to use this server 1 server, enable replication, and then we have to complete the replication wizard. We're going to say which server we want it to go to. It's going to be Seattle. It's going to go and have a look at Seattle and see what it can support. Notice that we're going to use Kerberos, fine. And we're going to compress that traffic because we don't want to be sending vast amounts of data across the network.
No.
Next, we want to specify which particular hard disk we want. And the reason that we might want to do that is because we might want to have redirected our replicated virtual machine swap files into a different hard disk, because there's actually no point in sending that across the wire to our replicated server. Finally, we want to just say what recovery points we want to have in place. This is where we can have a bunch of recovery points, which are literally snapshots that we can then roll back to. And we can say when we want to have incremental volume shadow copies. We're going to say only use the latest recovery point for the purposes of this. Then we want to say how we're going to get that initial copy over there.
So I could put it on a stick and then put it in an envelope and FedEx it over if it was over a slow link.
Yes, completely, because you could remember that we might have a really slow link and we might have a faster option, which is sending it by FedEx. We can also decide to start replication at a specific time, because our users inside our organisation might be using the internet. So we might want to share that connection with our normal internal users, hence what we want to do is specify a particular out of hours time to start the replication. We won't do that, we'll say next and we'll click finish to immediately start replicating that virtual machine over to our Seattle server. Now, in our case, we've connected that via quite a big piece of cable, a gigabit connection, because it's going to make the things run faster in our demo environment. However, it could be slow, and here's one we prepared earlier. Our DC, this London DC environment, is actually already replicated to another different server. So that we can,
if one evangelist, for example, is taking one laptop to one venue and I take it to another venue, I can actually turn on my replica DC and actually my VMs will authenticate against that replica, and I just turn it off again when I get back to the ranch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is an interesting scenario.
Yep, it allows us to do a couple of different things. In this case, though, what we could do, we're looking at this from the point of view of our running DC. So it allows us to do a planned failover.
And actually, yes, so we can plan over failover. And the clever thing here is, of course, is if I do a test failover, for example, when I start this copy of the virtual machine, it won't connect it to any networks. There will be no conflict between the two DCs saying I'm a DC. No, I'm the same DC.
Yeah.
We don't want that.
Absolutely. We'll have a quick look at a test failover in a second.
Yeah.
In this case, though, I'm just going to go and start an actual failover of our DC, and it's not going to work. And that's intentional because our DC is still running. We need to make sure that we've actually shut our domain controller first, because it's going to actually come in and say, you know what, things aren't actually in the right state for this, so it needs to be turned off. But we know that reverse replication is enabled, so the wizard tells us that's going to happen. If I did want to fail this over from my host, I'd actually have to turn the server off first.
You have to turn that London DC machine off.
Yes.
Simon, the other thing, could you just dive into settings there for me? I mean, actually, no, we'll leave that thought for later. Actually, I'm going to leave that
Save
for
that
later.
thought for later.
Yeah.
Other options that we can do here, we can go and have a quick look at the replication health. So we might want to check that things are okay and that things have actually been replicated properly. And in this case, we can see that replication has taken a little bit of time. It's not actually completed recently. Hence, one of the reasons why we might not actually want to fail over to our most recent snapshot.
Well, yeah, you certainly want to keep an eye on this.
Yep.
And you might want to put a data collection service or something like that on just to check your replication health. And of course, you rather than making mistakes as perhaps we are doing in the UI, we'd have some PowerShell scripts to make sure this happened in a reliable fashion. And
if I just pull back over to our London 3 server, which is the location that we're replicating London DC to, you'll notice that the replication options are slightly different.
Sorry, Simon, that's... Yeah,
so we have the ability to say, as you did earlier, a test failover. And if I do that, because it's completely safe for me to run a test of my failover environment, what will actually happen, and we will select a recovery point to use, we will actually now get another copy of our DC, and we will actually, if we scroll down here, we'll see this London DC test. Created another copy of the DC. We've actually disconnected all of the network card drivers from it. So that, all the networks from it. We should have a quick look at.
We've just confirmed that. Yeah, so that CorpNet thing that we specified earlier isn't there anymore.
Not connected.
It's not connected.
Because obviously we're now about to bring up an exact copy of that server on the network. We might want to manage that a little bit more carefully than just allowing it access to
So
the
we
same
could
network.
just put it on a private switch and just check everything's
Completely,
cool. Yep.
absolutely. So that allows us to run things up, spin up the apps that are on there, make sure everything's okay. I'm going to delete that just to clean our environment up as we go. There we go. And if we have a quick look at what else we can see, you can see that we're merging some changes back into London DC at that point. So have a quick look at the replication here. We can also do a failover, but this type of failover, rather than being planned, is unplanned. And this is what we would do should our entire primary site get sucked into the ground. So this allows us to do a failover from a remote location without having to worry about having access to our original physical location.
Yeah.
So we have lots of different ways to enable and use failover.
Okay.
So I think we've come to the end of our virtualization session.
Well, yeah, we've certainly had a good look at mobility. There's a bunch of other things in Hyper-V. I could talk about scale and so on and so forth, and how we can now really support any